Welcome, Marvelous, to an all new episode of the MCUExchange podcast. This is episode number 13. Yay!
Woo!
My name is Sharon. I'll be your host for this episode alongside these Charles
What's up?
and Joe.
Hello.
Just want to give a shout out again to our listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Breaker. You can also like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/DMCUExchange. You can also follow us on Twitter. That's twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can also follow us on YouTube. That's MCU Exchange. Today is a very special episode because we're going to talk about the worst moments, worst scenes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All right, who's going to go first? Charles, why don't you go first?
It's gonna be so hard to pick because I have 9 scenes or rather moments or whatever listed here. So I have to pick which is sort of the least offensive one. And I think I'm gonna start with the montage in the first Avenger. I think this I think it's safe to assume I'm the only one who has this on our rankings of like the worst, but I don't think this scene is necessarily terrible in terms of like the big picture of the first Captain America movie. I think it's a necessary scene. I saw an interview where Marcus and McFeely said they had no choice in the second act but to just sort of give a montage of Steve Rogers fighting through the war in a span of months, a span of years, because it's the timeline of the first Captain America movie isn't necessarily, it's a movie that doesn't take place in a month. It takes place throughout World War II. That by the time Captain America's ship crashes in the Antarctic, it's some time near the tail end of the war. So all those things we're seeing of him, the Howling Commandos fight in the forest, fight in the ocean Alps, whatnot. It happens in a span of a couple of months or years. But for me, I would have loved to have seen a particular mission instead of just a series of moments of the Howling Commandos fighting. I would have loved a more specific, powerful character moment during one of those missions. Maybe, I've always felt like his scenes were with Bucky in the first film were always insufficient, especially considering the second film is it's about the two of them, and I would have wanted to see more of their relationship, and I feel like that could have been explored in one of those missions. I mean, in the comics, Bucky was always just depicted as a kid, but later on in his comic book history, it was retconned that he wasn't just the kid. He was the guy who was in charge of doing the dirty work of Cap's team. Like whenever someone needed to actually start murdering people, Cap would always hesitantly send Bucky into the front lines of the war because that's why he was there. He was trained to be a stealth sort of killer. It would have been amazing if he sort of explored some of this in that montage, but we didn't get that. So I always felt like the montage was a wasted opportunity to give some character development. One of my gripes also with the first Captain America movie was that we don't necessarily see how he learns to be a fighter. He gets his serum and he starts fighting on the war itself without any actual training, or at least we don't see him train. We don't see him, study up on strategy and whatnot, or like war tactics. We just see him just straight up go into war. He fights Hydra soldiers with ease. He learns to use his shield. I would have loved to see maybe more him getting the hang of his power and whatnot. But yeah. So basically, that's my sort of least favorite scene in this episode.
Joe?
For me, I think one of the least ones is definitely, this is a group of themes, but it's the romance between Thor and Jane. It's just it's not just one scene. There are good scenes within them. Like I like the scene where they're talking about how magic works and like it's a combination of technology. But there's a lot of like the oh my god sequence when he turns into a god, or just the rather tough scenes to chew through in the Thor: The Dark World, which connects to last week's episode. It's not that they're like terrible sequences. It's just that like they're those scenes where you're like, okay, we got to get this, check it off the list. they're cute, haha. The chemistry's a little, maybe, I don't know, is there, but you kind of get through the sequences. And the thing to me is, which I find, I think Thor: The Dark World is the worst contender in this, because it's an interesting concept. They finally brought a human to Asgard, and they did absolutely nothing with it. And they focus more on the romance aspect rather than the whole point of, hey, I'm standing among gods. I'm a researcher. I probably spend a lot of time learning up on Norse mythology after literally going out or getting kissed by Thor. Nah, she just kind of gets a thing stuck inside her, goes around starry-eyed, oh, look, it's pretty, and then she's dying.
It's hard to disagree with that because yeah, Thor is Thor has a lot of offenders. Like I could actually come up with like 10 scenes from any of the Thor films that I don't like. And one of the things that's listed here is what do you call this? The Asgard scenes in Ragnarok. I feel like as all the scenes in Asgard in general tend to be bland because it's so weird because they don't know what to do with it necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you add like Jane to the mix to an already boring sort of take on Asgard, you're bound to have a very bland solution.
It's sad if you consider that, let's be honest, the design and everything was really well done for Asgard. Like, how would they pull it off when the first film came out? But they never really do anything with that city. It doesn't feel like a city. It feels more like a backdrop. Because even when Hela shows up, it's just all of a sudden they have 3,000 different soldiers. We see a few civilians in one shot, and it's kind of like, okay, we don't really explore. I think the only sequence from Ragnarok that really does what you want from this kind of series is where she breaks the ceiling and uncovers the different murals that were being hidden. That was really interesting, and I really wish they did more with that kind of concept, because we know that Odin wasn't like the benevolent god that he was portrayed as.
Like one thing I dislike about the Asgard design is that it looks like a fucking island. when it's
Oh my
when in
god.
the comics, when you say it's a realm, it's not. It's literally, the scale of Asgard is so undefined in the comics, and to see it
Mm.
in the films looking like an island, it's like, man, that's. I was expecting mountain. I was expecting lush forests and peaks and valleys and whatnot, but it's an island here.
Yeah. I mean, the realms in general are just planets.
Yeah.
When you see the relationship between Thor and Jane over the two Thor movies, like you're struggling to get their identity. Like you're struggling to get their chemistry. You're struggling to find that direction as a fan, as a viewer, when you see it, when you watch it, like what's happening, right? For me, my top three on the list, my third least worst MCU scene is from Thor: The Dark World. Actually, it's just a scene. It's not just a theme or like about the characters. It's just a scene where Erik Selvig
Mhm.
running around naked.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
Really?
god!
That's
Yeah,
I
like
interesting
keep
because
forgetting that.
yeah, it's like why? Like why do you what's the point of showing that? I know he's gone crazy, but there are other ways to show that he's gone crazy. And then after a few after a few scenes, he's like he's okay after that. Like where's the development
Yeah.
there, right?
In
What's
Age of
happening?
Ultron, he's allowed to be a teacher again.
Yeah, like come on, guys, what are you doing? Like I don't know what's happening. Like Thor: The Dark World's on the top of the list there. Like it's the worst MCU film, and seeing him, the development from Thor 1, like he's that intelligent guy who knows all the
yeah,
answers, and then going to Thor: The Dark World, and you deconstruct him, you destroyed him in one scene, see him naked, like because he's like having a vision about convergence, and then after a few
Mm.
scenes, he's in the scene where Stanley cameoed, like I don't know, just lays it in there. It's just
yeah.
disappointing. Disappointing for me.
Did he
And he's one of the
become
most
crazy?
consistent.
Sorry, what?
Did he become crazy because of his experience in the Avengers? I totally forgot why he's even crazy in the first place.
Because which was really confusing is that the ending, the post-credit sequence in Thor teased Loki taking control of him, and then
Yeah.
he was a different character. So that was one thing that they never really followed up on, but they implied that he literally took over the mind of Erik Selvig. And then all of a sudden he was in a different dimension after all in Avengers, but they still used that like he was communicating through his mind, and that drove him insane and gave him the visions. But it was never really well explained because they kind of screwed themselves over with that post-credit sequence.
Let's now move on to the second in your list. How about you, Joe? You start with your second.
For me, second would have to be. I had a tough time trying to figure out because it was like, should I go back to Thor with the whole calling Mjolnir Mew Mew so everyone understands what it's called? But I think I kind of have to go with the Black Panther railway fight sequence.
Okay.
Because it's not the thing is, it's a cool concept, but it looks a little video gamey. The characters float a little. You do see that they had to rush it. It could be much worse. We're not talking like 90s level CGI here that some kind of attribute to it, but it's still, and it's not long. Like the sequences that look off are like, let's say about 4 minutes maybe at most, but they do feel off. And it just feels like they could have given it a few more days or a week or two just to get that right. And I'm kind of, it's just sad because overall it's such a great film. And it's followed up by probably one of my favorite moments with Killmonger and T'Challa staring at the sun going down. And then you just have this really cartoony action sequence for it.
Did you see the on YouTube? I forgot what this channel is, but they basically review movie CGI and their breakdown.
Digital, yeah,
Corridor Digital. Their breakdown of the Black Panther third act sequence in the railway is like some of the most informative things I've ever seen, because they actually, like you're wondering why aren't these guys the ones supervising the Marvel CGI, because they bring up a good point in that, having black suited superheroes fight on a dark backdrop is never a clever way of, putting together an action sequence. You're gonna get some lighting problems. You're gonna get some video game gummy, stretchy looking CGI and textures. And Black Panther is an amazing film. Its biggest detriment is truly its CGI. I mean, the scenes, that last fight, that last sequence in the train or whatever, that's not.
Yeah.
That's the worst CGI of the movie, but terrible CGI is sprinkled all over that movie, and it's crazy.
It feels like they had different priorities, and to be honest, like I hope what they're trying to do now is break free from the every film has to have action beat sequences, because like Black Panther, the rhinoceros also looked slightly off. It's not bad. It's I mean, like, we're not talking about really really bad CGI here. It's just it could have been better or could have been done better. And if anyone let's give a shout out to Corridor Digital, because they have an amazing series where they even invite someone from the effects team that works on the Marvel films to talk about Infinity War and Endgame. And they give some great breakdowns. And the thing is, it's just that, like, some people tend to overreact on the CG, similar to the Spider-Man suit being CG. But it's just sad because it does bog down the film a bit. And I think their focus was to make Wakanda look good.
Yeah.
And they nailed that. And it's ironic, if considering our conversation before about, Asgard, they were trying to make the city real, but I think Black Panther succeeded in making the city look amazing, feel culturally appropriate, and at the same time feel alive, just with a few sequences or few shot effects. And then you have the fighting sequence.
Charles, you're up. Top 2 on the list.
Oh, it's so hard because this like on my list you have a bunch of like nonsensical stuff, like scenes that just scenes I find super corny, and some scenes I think again that make the movie needlessly bloated. Okay, so I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna go with the subplot in Age of Ultron, the whole Thor's adventure to skinny dipping in the cave. Tony Stark visiting the Nexus for literally that one scene where he's just kind of like using the internet. I think Age of Ultron is at its core, an amazing movie as it sets up so much stuff that pay off in Endgame and Infinity War. I'd argue that Age of Ultron does more for the MCU story wise than the first Avenger ever did because so much from Age of Ultron actually pays off. In Endgame, you got Tony Stark's vision, you got the broken shield, you got Vision coming to life, you got the Infinity Stones and whatnot. But for me, one of the biggest detriments to this movie is that weird subplot with Thor just going off to meet Selvig and then skinny dipping. Obviously we find out, a chunk of that scene gets deleted, so you kind of wonder why the rest of the scene is still in the movie.
Mm,
Thor just needed a reason to be able to explain what the fuck the Infinity Stones are. Again, it kind of has nothing to do with the actual movie. In the big picture wise, it does pay off in several years down the line. But in terms of the actual movie, it doesn't do anything to make it better. It makes it more bloated. Like I would have preferred to have seen, a moment with Ultron, a good character moment between the team or whatnot. But instead, we
mm,
get Thor just taking his shirt off and just going into the cave, which is fucking total bullshit for me.
mm.
I felt like
You know
that
that
was rushed.
wasn't there? I think that was one of the last committee aspects that was still there when Ike Perlmutter was still a little bit in charge, where they're like, okay, you have to prioritize these sequences. And I think Joss Whedon in an interview said he had to add that sequence so he could keep the barn because they
Yeah,
wanted to get rid of the barn. I mean, respect to him, the fight for that, because I think the barn sequences are some of the most personal ones we have in the entire franchise.
no, yeah,
Mm.
And it just feels like there was still, I think it wasn't until this film that the that even Feige said he wants to quit. He's going to stop if they don't leave him alone. And you can
yeah.
see that up till that point there was still a lot of meddling in these films.
Dude, the barn scene is absolutely one of the best scenes in the MCU. Like you said, it
Yeah.
showcases a lot of the character dynamic. We
Hmm.
we we get a hint of a bit of a civil war when Tony and Steve are chopping
Chopping wood.
logs and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we that moment between Hawkeye and his wife talking about how they, even though these characters are gods, they need someone like Hawkeye on the team because of the humanity he brings to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't hate the Black Widow Hulk romance. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people find it disgusting. I think it's absolutely fine. Their moments together in the farm sequence are absolutely. I think they make the characters. They deepen sort of who they are and who
Yeah.
they deepen our notions of of who they were, of who they are now, how they're battling sort of their demons. And yeah, that farm scene is absolutely amazing, and I can't believe that was the thing they put at gunpoint for Whedon to put in that fucking stupid cave scene. That
Yeah.
it's like, well, for me, it's absolutely insane that they couldn't think of something else to justify Thor learning about the Infinity Stones. Like you'd think he would have known about the Mind Stone by now. You'd think he would have known
Yeah.
that the orb or the thing in Vision's head was the Mind Stone. Like he had to watch a PowerPoint presentation in a cave to explain it to him.
I actually now wish there was a version where just someone shows up and just shows him this presentation while he's chilling in the hot tub.
Really?
Oh,
That
I know
that's
that stone.
that's a very Taika moment. You know what, you mentioning it, I kind of wish they just did that instead of that dumb cave scene.
That would have been great in the like kind of what how I love how they made the Thor the Dark World scene even better when they made what Matt Damon play Loki in Thor Ragnarok
Oh yeah, the
Oh,
acting scene. Yeah.
and
yeah.
Liam Hemsworth. Just that with the thing. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Aaron? What's your
Yeah. Yeah.
what's your
Before I
ritual?
say mine, I just wanna say, I love that barn scene with the Avengers. You see them
Yeah.
taking a step back,
Mm,
see them as humans, like literally what Nick Fury said. Like, we're here, we don't have any tech. I only have you guys. So I love that scene. Seeing the
Yeah.
heroes like regrouping, um, planning in a way that there's no big base. They're just in a house eating dinner.
mm,
And also, I think that scene where in the cave, like they are uh, Thor is like seeing the visions of Infinity Stones. Like they're trying to plant the idea to casual fans, like, hey, this is going to be a big thing in the next few movies. Look at this, right? Like it's their idea of trying to give out that these stones are important. My top two on the list is it's really hard to pick between these two that I listed. Maybe for me it's the origin of Nick Fury's missing eye. I mean, it's kind of
Uh,
Oh
a disappointing one.
shit!
It kind of
That
disappointing one for me because the thing is they built it up so many times. Like they hyped us
yeah.
about it in different movies, right? Especially with Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and now knowing that going into Captain Marvel, and then you have that expectation like what's this? Like, what's this betrayal? How is this going to happen? There's before even Captain Marvel showed up. There are several theories that Carol Danvers might betray him. Nick Fury might be betrayed by Skrull, or I don't know that. There's so many theories. There's so many speculations. There's so many rumors back then. And now seeing the movie, like when I first saw the scene, like when Goose scratched his eye, like that's it. All that build up and that's it. I was disappointed. I was disappointed. Honestly disappointed. Even the second viewing, I couldn't.
I'll be honest. I actually kind of think it's clever.
Oh yeah.
The thing was, before that all happened, I always thought. So for me, the biggest theory is that a Skrull would be behind it. That he trusted someone.
Uh-huh.
I always thought it was going to be Coulson. Like I was like, why is Coulson in this film if not to be a Skrull to backstab his friend? That was like the idea that just nested in my head. And when first time I saw it, I was also like, oh, okay, Coulson is gone. How's he still has his eye? And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, the cat did it. And the thing is, yes, at first I thought, okay, they're trying. What it is they're just trying to, defy expectations. They're trying to make that a lot. I think that's a big problem with Captain Marvel is that its theme is generally trying to defy expectations, but it falls a little flat because it's just too much story behind it, too much fan expectations in some ways.
Yeah.
But the more I think about it, it does fit to Fury because we saw a completely different version of Fury. And just seeing him like get his eye scratched from a cat and then having to kind of continue lying and saying, oh, it was a big story, it just feels like Nick Fury. Like he would be the guy.
Part of it, right?
Yeah, he stubbed his toe and he would tell everyone he lost his toe in a battle against an orc, I don't know what. Like he just seems like the guy who would blow that out of proportions. And as soon as I had that mindset, it kind of worked for me, Plus, I just really like Talos' reaction every time.
the thing that sort of I'm sort of in between the both of you. I'm not mega mad about the way it turned out, but at the same time, I was like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sort of used to the MCU just throwing away some stuff just to defy expectations. Like Joe said, they turned something you've been sort of building up in your head as a joke to throw fans off. And yeah, the joke is kind of it's a bit clever, but just the way how that scene pans out, it didn't even seem like a major scratch. But when we see his eye in Winter Soldier, his eye looks like it got dosed by a ton of chemicals in his eye. Like, but when he gets scratched, it's like it's barely a deep wound. So I mean, I don't know. Goose is not a normal cat, so they could explain that Fleur can scratch 1,000 times harder than normal cats. They could fucking explain that. But yeah, I'm sort of I would have loved it if it was a Skrull. It would have been crazy if it was like a Skrull Coulson posing as as an ally, but it turns out to be a total asshole. I would have preferred that. But what we got was something I can shrug off, but I totally understand why people don't like it.
But you know what the hardest thing I had ever since we saw the scar? I never could figure out what would do that. Because like the 3 scratches he always had over his eye, I could never. What would do that? No gun blast, no. He would have to be scratched by something. That's kind of because. And I still kind of, it would be clever. I hope what they do is that they do explore more past stories, like what happened with Captain America during World War II, because I agree with your point that they just kind of skipped a lot of potential there. Or just explore like Nick Fury, because I could see them going, oh, it was just the outside scratch. Because I'm a cat owner. You guys do not want to see my arm. It's full of scratches everywhere, but they're never too deep. So you could still kind of reintroduce that he lost the eye completely. He just has the patch over the eye and gets it temporarily. But it's a weird thing because I could never figure out what would make that wound besides some kind of scratch.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you as a cat owner, can cat scratch your eye out that hard?
Yes and no. So cat claws, the thing is with cats is that they have their claws are curved, so they're like hooks. So
Mhm.
if you move wrong, that hook's inside of you. I have a few blue spots because I moved wrong and he got hooked in me. And they can
Oh,
be quite deep. So it depends on how you get scratched. But like by the eye, in his case, he wasn't paying attention. He could scratch through the eyeball because it's even softer than skin. And
I like
if a cat scratches, it'll go long. So your skin even won't last that.
I
At
like
least mine.
I like how we're analyzing the science of how a pet cat can scratch your eye out in real
We're talking
life.
about cats now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send a picture of my arm as proof.
Go ahead.
With all this talk about cats, I wonder where Goose is. Like, I wonder how
Yeah.
they will address it in Captain Marvel
Yeah.
2.
That's a good question.
Where is that cat?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Is he in
That's
Endgame?
a
Like,
nuclear
running around?
bomb hiding in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere. More than Hulk.
All right. Okay. Here comes the verdict. The top worst scene or worst moment in the MCU. Charles, you're up.
Okay, so before I say my top one, I wanna share the stuff I listed here.
Of
Some of
course.
the stuff I sort of think of this as a sort of like a honorable mentions of scenes that I don't like. Okay, so number one, I don't like the what are those joke in Black Panther. I think
Yeah.
Shuri. Yeah.
I think that joke came in a year or two late. Like when the movie came out, that meme was so overdone, and no one was saying that anymore. Another scene that I don't like here is I posted on Twitter. I don't like it in the Incredible Hulk. I don't like it when Bruce Banner and Betty Ross try to bang, and
Oh my God.
no, 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 I can't get a boner. I like it. I get it. Just that image of that happening in my head is like, damn, I can't believe they were that explicit about Bruce's emotions and whatnot. I mean, again, I get it scientifically. That makes sense. I think Bruce in Age of Ultron, he does a better, more subtle explanation of why he can't be in a relationship with someone. It's
Mm.
more, it's less. I don't want to say crass, but it's less explicit of what he means. But in the Incredible Hulk, that made me like fucking cringe just seeing that scene. One sequence I didn't like also here is in Spider-Man Homecoming when he
Yeah.
goes to DC and he gets trapped in that warehouse and he just hangs out doing nothing, waiting for the door to open. I think like I could probably come up with an edit of Homecoming without that, and it would make no difference to the story at all. It just shows Spider-Man being late at the at
Mm.
the the Lincoln Memorial bombing. That's the only thing it does for the actual story, but it adds an extra 5-10 minutes to the movie, which makes it needlessly
Mm.
long. For
Mm.
me, also here on my list is I wasn't a fan of the Rocket Yondu subplot in Guardians 2. Like in
No.
terms of what they did, where like the forest thing, the whole thing with the was it Ravagers or yeah the
Yeah.
Ravagers where they get trapped with Taserface. It's hilarious, and Yondo gets a pretty cool moment with Rocket sometime after that. But that whole thing, I just sort of skipped through that. For me, the more interesting part of Guardians 2 is the stuff with Peter's dad and with Ego and the planet and whatnot, and the mystery what's going on with the
Mm.
actual planet. I find that more compelling than the taser face stuff. I feel like that was there too as filler, which to me makes Guardians less of an amazing movie compared to the first one. But for me, I think the worst scene for me on the MCU, I tried each time I rewatched this movie, I tried sort of, try to looking at differently. Maybe it's better on my 100th watch. But for me, this is on par with the Spider-Man dancing scene in Spider-Man 3. I really hate the fight scene between Rhodey and Iron Man 2, where the DJ is
Ah,
spinning, they're beating each other up. Like the scene is good in theory. I just hate that they're fighting each other to fucking a hip hop beat. It sort of lessens
yeah.
the seriousness of Tony having a downward spiral. Obviously Iron Man 2 was never going to be an adaptation of the Demon in the Bottle story, so they're sort of downplaying it by making it a bit funny. He's drunk, he's peeing in his armor, he's throwing stuff in the everywhere in the room, and then they undercut it even more with this fucking stupid fight scene with bad music. And I wish they kept it
Mm.
serious at least to show how bad Tony was, going crazy. But yeah, this wasn't good for me. I hate the scene. I hate the way the music is done for. Well, I hate what the music does to it, and it's for me. It's the one scene I still can't get over. I thought, like I mentioned earlier, I thought by my 100th viewing it would be less worse, but to me it's still kind of like I
Mm.
can't understand why they did this. In many ways, to me, it's like the Peter Parker dancing on the streets in Spider-Man 3.
I have a similar issue with the Captain Marvel, where they fight in the spaceship. The song "Like a Girl." Like
Oh
the
yeah,
song makes sense. I understand why it's there. It's not a bad, but it just feels like the song from the theme or from the speed doesn't fit the action sequence as per se,
yeah.
and it just takes a little away from the sequence.
Yeah, especially with that No Doubt song, it's like what's the title of that song? Like a girl.
Like a girl, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, in that entire Captain Marvel movie, I don't think Carol Danvers' gender was ever put into question, especially during her time with the Kree. She seems
Yeah.
very respected. I mean, one of them is Minerva Gemma Chan. They don't ever get shit for being a woman. So when she's fighting the Kree and the Just a Girl song plays, it kind of doesn't make sense because you were never chastised for being a woman. Your power as a woman was
Yeah.
never put into question. So I don't understand why they're putting this song in a fight against the Kree, who for all intents and purposes respected her for who she was.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was weird for
It
me. Yeah,
it would have
that was.
that
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. That song would have made sense if it was like she gets into a fight with the guy whose bike she stole. Like that would have
Yeah,
made
yeah,
sense.
that would have made sense. Yeah, because she's getting belittled for being a woman, but the Kree, they're not fucking. They don't give a fuck that she's a woman.
She's more of a nuclear power. That's what she's scared of.
Yeah,
Joe, is that your top one? Or
No, actually, that's
oh,
just
okay,
that was on the side. That was my honorable mention.
your turn.
My top. This will probably be a little weird. It has nothing to do with the sequence. It absolutely makes sense in the story. I hate that they kill off Crossbones in Captain
oh,
America: Civil War, because I think he was such an interesting character. They kept teasing him like someone who always gets back up and will haunt Captain America until he can't stop, which he still does. And it was like I always wondered how would they do the Crossbones costume, and I loved the direction they went with. It was so unique. It was really creative, and he gets killed off in the first 5 minutes. it, and I had a hard time between him and Quicksilver because both characters were characters I wanted to see more of. And the thing is, it's not like it's the worst scene in the thing. It's just a personal. I really wish they didn't do that sequence, you know.
yeah,
And I,
yeah. It's more the creative decision. You don't like it. Like the
yeah,
Quicksilver you mentioned. I'm kind of like, oh yeah, that was
because
pointless.
I mean, Quicksilver, sadly, I think is still mainly because of those contractual obligations with Fox. And he was a character I say they could have done a lot of creative stuff with. And the same with Crossbones. And I'm generally not a fan of them always killing off bad guys. I've always had a problem with that. Birds of Prey does a similar thing with some characters. And I'm just like, you can do so much more. I know that you're like, okay, we can only get them for one film. But the MCU is just a film where you know these actors return. They keep coming back. And then you still resort to killing them off because it's a plot point. And the thing is with Crossbones, it's just I really like that character, and I just love they teased so many cool ideas with him. Like we don't even know all the sequences of when the Avengers were tracking him down and seeing him evolve, or at least like I don't know, someone taking over the mantle and continuing that legacy. There was just no. That was just the end of the character, an abrupt. He was pretty much a plot point, a MacGuffin.
You mentioned earlier, sort of Marvel trying to be clever by throwing us these curveballs just for the sake of it. Quicksilver is very much a curveball that they just wanted to. The joke is Whedon was sort of fooling audience into thinking he was gonna kill Hawkeye, and no,
Yeah.
what? It's not Hawkeye. Psych! I fucking got you. For me, I guess for that effect it works, but it kind of does nothing. It just sort of
Yeah.
prompts Wanda to kill Ultron. And I guess, they wanted to display what power Wanda has when she's unhinged, which, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
WandaVision, we're going to find out what it really is. But, the MCU would have been way more interesting with Quicksilver on it.
The thing is, I like Hawkeye as a character, and I think it was a clever, like, the cliched I'm 2 days to retirement, just twisting that on its head. But, like, the problem, I think, with Quicksilver is also that we have two versions of the same character. Ironically, both played by actors who both became better known through the same film. But, like, one is running around, pushing bullets to the side, and what does he do? He shoves a car in front of Hawkeye to protect him?
Yeah, it's a very contrast depiction of both characters.
And the thing is, with super speed, it just kind of defeats the purpose a little. That he can be shot, even protecting someone, he could have shoved them out of the way. No, he literally pushed a car in front of them and could have just been on the other side.
Okay, my turn. It's really hard to choose between. I have a top two candidate, but I'm gonna say my honorable mention first. So I just decided like literally 5 minutes ago. My honorable mention
Okay,
would be
go
the
ahead.
death of the Warriors 3 in Thor Ragnarok.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they are such an important member, like important member of the Thor franchise, and then Hela killing them up swiftly is like disappointing for me. After
Yeah.
all that big roles in Thor 1 and Thor the Dark World, and then during Thor Ragnarok. I know that it's a big movie. Hulk is there, Valkyrie's there, but it's just so quick. It's really hard to see. Okay, my top one. This is not just scene; it's a moment in the MCU that
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
quite disappointed. Doesn't like. It's between the romance between Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter.
Oh.
Oh
Oh.
shit!
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, it wasn't addressed, and it's really weird thinking about it now because you know what happened in Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're kissing your niece, bro. What's happening? Like,
Can we please get that sequence?
yeah, like it's a brief kiss. I don't know. It's like if you come to think about it in a different perspective, no, yeah, it's not. It's not a. It's not a. It's cringy. It's not a It's not a family related kiss. No, it's not. It's a passionate one. So, I know that I don't know if that storyline would have if they push through that storyline moving forward, or they will address it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, Sam and Bucky will just like, hey, you kissed Steve, but I don't know if I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know if Sharon is aware of, I know there's still a debate if there's an alternate timeline of Steve and Peggy. I don't know if it will affect the current MCU timeline. That, hey, that's Steve Rogers in the picture frame with my aunt Peggy. It's okay. Like, I kissed that guy several years ago. So I don't know. I,
Dude.
I don't know if that's a whole other discussion. But seeing that romance uh, quite a bit like being disregarded.
If I thought the Hulk boner was gross, I think the fucking just thinking about trying to explain to Peggy in the past, hey, I'm from the future. A couple of years, several years from now, you're gonna have a niece, and I may have had relationships with that niece, physical. After Civil War, we went into hiding and we hung out. It's disgusting.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
imagine
that's not-
living in that timeline where he sees Sharon's born, and then
Oh,
guiding her all throughout her life, knowing at the back of his mind,
Worse.
knowing at the back of his mind that I will kiss this girl in an alternate timeline in the future,
yeah, that's
right?
kind of.
You know, the worst thing is that Futurama literally did an episode where I think Fry is his own grandfather or something, and when I saw that, I was like, this seems familiar.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
No, if Futurama, the old man in their group is he's like Fry's great grandson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there,
That's
Oh my god. I
those are
never
our top
saw
three
a sequence
scenes.
like that.
so
Those are our
gross.
top three scenes. Just wanna share, guys. We asked on Twitter, for their bets on their worst MCU moments, MCU scenes. Just wanna read a few of those responses here.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
okay, here is from Paul Klein. It's at Paul Kleinyo. The splitting the Guardians up for so much of the story of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's what he doesn't
Yes,
like.
yes,
Mm.
that's what I don't like.
Yeah. Next one is Nick Barrios. He said that Iron Man 2 was whack. As much as I rewatched Infinity War, can't say the same for Endgame. I love all the YouTubers, follow MCU religiously, blah blah blah. I walk out, Thor 1 was the one I walk out of theater and loved the first Avenger. It ruined me.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
he walked out of the theater during Thor 1. Alex Sodic, he agreed with me. Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter getting together briefly was terrible. Uh, Mighty Mar, Mighty Mary 007 says 80% of Thor: The Dark World. And Khalid Patel, he says the 5-year gap in Endgame that left so many holes to fill storyline wise.
Interesting. Like
Ah.
I find that very interesting because like there's no hole. I mean obviously there are a lot of questions, but you know it's not a plot hole per se because that 5 years isn't pertinent to how they defeat Thanos.
Yeah.
Like nothing in those 5 years happens that helps them defeat Thanos. I mean, the only thing that helps them sort of defeat Thanos is Ant-Man coming out of the quantum realm. That's the thing that's pertinent to them actually defeating Thanos. Now, if you think the rat saving the universe is a plot hole, then I guess it's fair to think of that. But that's what the fucking story called for.
Yeah.
Actually, he's Ratman. He's a secret superhero. We'll find out in Ratman in 2024.
Oh man, they have a poster for that, right?
An ABC show by Jeff Loeb, Ratman.
Oh my.
Sorry.
There you have it, guys. First MCU scene. So, if for any of our listeners, if you want to add to our list of worst MCU scenes, you can do that on Twitter. That's twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can also comment that on our latest post on Facebook. That's facebook.com/TheMCUExchange. Okay, once again, please do listen to us over at Spotify, over at YouTube, over at Anchor, over at Breaker, over at Google Podcasts. It's the best time for you to listen to our podcast since
Yeah.
everyone's at home, everyone is trying to find ways on how to spend their time at home. So please do spend at least 30 minutes or 40 minutes listening to us over at the MC Exchange podcast. And this has been me. My name is Aaron. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/AaronChino. That's AeronChino. You can also follow Charles.
You can find me on Twitter at CFS William Web.
You can also follow Joe.
At that Albel, THATABERL.
This has been episode 13 of the MC Exchange podcast. Bye, guys, and always keep safe.
Bye.
Until next time.